All right, welcome back. I have another Demco Almanac video. I was chatting with Lefty EDC, the wonderful one and only, and he made a really good point that just there's not enough information about what's the difference between the various different Demco AD20.5, AD20S, AD20. It's not clear, and I'm going to try and make it really simple. I'm going to try and do it as fast as possible so this won't be like another 1 hour diatribe. So let's just break it down real quick. Here I have an AD20.5, which is a smaller EDC version, shorter blade, narrower handle. Here I have the AD20S, which is the next size up. This is the same handle thickness from how tall it is and the actual material used in the handle as the full-size AD20 that I have here. There are two different versions of it here. But the blade stock thickness is narrower. So you can see the difference in the blade stock thickness. Let me use this one over here that's not swedged, like this carbon fiber, so you can really get some eyes on it. And we'll just move this one up here. These are pretty similar actually in the blade stock thickness, but you can see the actual handle itself is much narrower on the AD20.5. So let me get these back down. The things to know about them are size and weight first and foremost, and then we're going to go into a lot of the different options that are available in each one of these sizes. These are really 3 sizes here, but I wanted a carbon variant up here as well. So let's start with a quick little measurement on length. We're just going to compare these to each other. We're not going to be comparing them to other knives or anything like that. Let's just do these 3 for now. So we'll go ahead and throw the AD20.5 here. And you know what? I'm going to put the AD20.5 in the back because the perspective is going to be off and it'll actually make it look more similar in size if it's in the front, which it's not. It's definitely a much smaller knife. And then here's the AD20 up front. So now, although the perspective is actually further ballooning or exaggerating the difference in size between this one and these two, at least it gives you a sense. So the AD20.5 in the shark foot has about a 3-inch blade here. You can see the cutting edge is a bit less. The handle itself right around 4.5 inches for a total length of 7.5, maybe just shy. Coming over here to the AD20S, blade length 3.5 with a little more than a 3.25 on the cutting edge. Total length of 8, let's say like 8 3/8, and then just about a 5-inch handle, and then you're going to see something very similar here, although this is a clip point, so it's going to be a little longer. It's like 3.625 on the blade length with like a good almost like 3.4 inches on the cutting edge. And then you've got a total length coming in just shy, like maybe like 8.625 or so. And then handle, again, still right around 5. Now, the blade stock thickness ends up making it so that, it's quite a bit wider. However, when you go with the G10 with the liner versus the titanium stuff, that starts messing stuff around. So I'm not going to go into the total thickness here, but no, when you go with the wider blade, the whole thing can be a little wider depending on which handles you get. And similarly, if you go with the AD20S Slim, it won't necessarily be much wider if you're going with like the G10 because you have some inlaid liners for part of it. A lot of it is just straight up a slab of G10, which is really cool. And then here you have a full liner on the Grivory. Now, part of why I was excited to do this today is because they just dropped an S35VN variant with G10 on the AD20.5 for the first time, and that's really exciting. You get a similar thing here with the carbon fiber handles where you're really just dealing with a slab of carbon fiber the whole way through like you get with the titanium, so that's cool. Let's go ahead and just do some weigh-ins real quick. And I'm picking some somewhat extreme versions here, but I thought that would be kind of good to kind of show you the top of the range for each. Because the peanut, for instance, this is called the peanut shark foot. is going to be a little lighter than one with a thumb stud in the AD20S. And then the Grivery is like the lightest of the AD20.5. But there are versions of the AD20.5 that weigh as much as like an ounce more. Let me just re-zero this real quick. This is about 3.5 ounces, 3.51. I do have an aftermarket clip, but it didn't change much. This one should be just over 5 ounces, 5.25. Looking at about 5.5 if it's one with a thumb stud. That's the AD20S. AD20 full size in titanium. Again, the very extreme. I actually have to grab my other scale because that's over 7 ounces. Maybe this one comes in, yeah, 6.13 on the AD20 with a swedge and a carbon fiber. Let me just grab my other scale. I should have known on a Demco video not to bring out the wimpy scale. All right. And then we're going to pull out a few more variants and kind of talk through some of the things you might need to know on what those variants are. So 7.6 ounces. The heaviest one I have is just shy of 8 ounces. So there's some different variations depending on thumb studs, slots, all that stuff that can make a difference. And then, you know what, let me just pull out like a tie AD20.5 just to show you there's some range, right? That was 3.5 ounces. This is 4.35 ounces, so it's almost an ounce more for a titanium AD20.5. So there's some pretty big range that you get with scales and stuff. Like you can get, you know, a 7.5 to 7.75 ounce version of the AD20S if you go with the titanium AD20S without the, they have a milled version also. So let's get into it. Let's talk about all that stuff and some of the variants. I wanted to start small. I realize if I bring you into a table full of knives, it's going to be a little hard to follow what I'm doing. So hopefully this helped kind of get some basic orientation around what is an AD20S, which is really an AD20, which is a slim blade, not an overall, you know, there's no slimming on the scales or anything like that. What is an AD20? It's the full size. And then what I did here is I laid out, how did I do this here? Across the top, so based on materials, a row of materials, because that's actually kind of an interesting way of looking at it. So across the top here, I have AD20. I have one extra AD20 right here just to show the difference between the slotted and non-slotted. So there's a slotted versus a non-slotted full-size AD20. Really no difference in price or anything, just a matter of where you got it, when you got it, who you got it from. What you wouldn't have paid any different for that slot or no slot as far as I know. So on the left we have carbon fiber variants going from AD20. I have 3 versions of AD20S here that I'll talk through. AD20.5 at the bottom. This is kind of the G10 and Grivery section. I have AD20 G10 at the top here, so that's a full size, again, full blade stock thickness versus you saw the slim earlier, right? Pretty big difference there. They're both G10, but full size, different blade shapes and stuff. And we're gonna get into, we're gonna try and get into blade shapes, but that's a whole nother can of worms. And then I got a couple Grivery variants. Now there is a G10 variant that just came out for the AD20.5, and that would have been nice to put in here, but they're not here yet. They just dropped on Knife Center today, so it's a cool thing to be talking about, that they have an S35VN blade steel now instead of either an AUS-10A or 3V in the Taiwan versions. This is a Taiwan version. It's very limited, called the Timascus. It has 3V blade steel. Really super cool variant, but I think they only made like 1 or 200. I'm not sure if they're still making them or not. Coming over here to the Thai side, we got AD20, AD20, as we mentioned. And then here is a AD20S. And this particular one has no milling in the scales. There are versions that have milled out inside the scale there. Watch some of my other videos if you want to see that. But they're, you know, maybe ½ an ounce less. And then we have a Thai textured. It's a different titanium, just to note, and I've mentioned this a few times, but it's really a different finish. This is kind of a, I don't know if it's bead blasted or it's, you know, a polished finish versus a matte finish. So this one feels much rougher on the texture than this one. This one's a little smoother in the hand. But the AD20.5, again, if you don't know, is made out of, and you'll see it right on here, Demco and Taiwan. You won't see that on the US-made AD20S or the AD20, which are all made in the US. And then lastly, there's a matte version of the AD20.5 in titanium. I have both of these out here because they're a different price point, $315, $375 on the MSRP. And then I have two of these Griveries out here because they represent a little bit of the range. So let me pull out my everyday EDC because I think it's one of the most common. And this is an AUS 10A made in Taiwan. You see the landing pad right there representing the Grivery. Regardless of whether it's AD20S, AD20, or AD20.5, if you're in Grivery, you have a landing pad. It won't say AD20.5 on there on the AD20S or on the AD20, but it's going to have that landing pad one way or the other. This is just a, like a tumbled or stonewashed finish here. And coming over here, there is a Grivery version of 3V, which is kind of a cool variant. So instead of 150 MSRP, I think this one's like 190, and you get 3V with the Grivery, which is kind of cool for someone that wanted a more premium blade steel, but didn't want to go drop 375 on that guy, as an example. And then you're going 3V here. Now let's head over to these carbon fibers because I got a few variants. They did at some of the blade shows, some of the custom knife shows, these enhanced versions. And I'm not pulling out customs. If you know Demco, they do customs also, but let's not get into that today. I want to go more, this is kind of an enhanced version, but this is kind of a hybrid. But at some of the knife shows, you might see something like this that's a little different than their average. This next one right here is a drop point, and it has the same carbon scale as these are all pretty much going to have the same exact scale on them, but AD20S again, so it's the slim. But slims are available in drop point, and let's just hit that right now. Drop point, shark foot. These are the two traditional ones that have been done for for a while now. I think they started these in 2021, towards the end of 2021. They were available, at least back then, in a I don't know if they're still doing this, but a no slot version also on the, at least on the shark foot there. And then they brought out two versions. I only have one of them. I still haven't tracked down the second one, but just this year, or towards the end of 2022, they brought out what's called the peanut shark foot, where there's no thumb stud. It's replaced by just a deeper gorge, or whatever you want to call it, fossa or fuller, that you can use quite effectively. As you can see there, it's quite good. You get used to it, you get better and better with it, but it's kind of a minimalist version. The rest of the blade, I believe, is pretty much the same as the shark foot, but let's take a look at it. I don't know how closely I've really looked at it, but I'm pretty sure the rest of this one's fairly similar. It looks pretty darn similar. However, you saw the drop point, and the drop point does have a variant. No, it's not a variant of the drop point, but they did bring out a fourth AD20S blade this year, in 2022 rather. Now we're in 2023. And that one's called the Slicer Shark, and instead of being a drop point, it's more of like a spear point. So it kind of looks like, if I were to try and show it, it starts to drop off sooner. Instead of going out and then down, it drops off a little sooner, and it's maybe a little, I think it might get a little narrower sooner, and they call it the Slicer Shark. It's a little more of a spear point design, but I wouldn't call it a pure spear point. It's almost like a modified version of this. I don't know. I'd have to take a look at it again and see what I thought, but food for thought there. And then I actually think I may have missed it, but over here I just have a what I think is probably the best value in the lineup, which is a carbon fiber AD20.5. They now have this both in 3V and S35VN, $265 either way through Knife Center. And that's actually a really good value because you're getting out of the Grivery into a more premium handle. And so if you like carbon fiber, it's a little smooth. It's probably the only thing I'd say. I wish they would do this in something more similar to like either what Civivi does in an ideal world, where there's this nice texturing on it and it feels very good in hand, kind of almost soft in hand, or something like I've done on this aftermarket from Carbodize, where it has like a fat carbon. It's not that much, they're both kind of, they're not bad. It's not like they're going to go flying out of your hand or anything, but they're not the most textured variant. So this one is available in both clip point, like I have it here, and shark foot. Pretty much everything except for the AD20 is going to have something in shark foot. Now, one I don't have out here is there is an AD20S variant with a clip point in D2 blade steel. Only in D2 you can get the AD20S, the slim, and in Grivory or G10. So it's kind of this low-end version of the AD20S. And that's worth noting as well. As you may have noticed, there's a smooth tie here. The AD20S also does come in this textured tie. I have a couple of those, but don't have enough room out here. Don't want to confuse you any more than I already am. And I think that's pretty much it. Like, we really just wanted to get, a concise video out, although I don't know how concise that turned out to be, or if I chose to arrange these in the right way. But I was thinking it'd be kind of interesting to start with the AD20 full size at the top and work your way down by handle material to the AD20.5 and really see the difference where, again, your AD20 and your AD20S are the same handle, and the AD20.5 and the AD20S are almost the same blade stock thickness. So it's interesting how they've kind of thought through this lineup. I know it's not super clear. The names all sound similar but different, and for some people this hopefully will be a helpful resource. So that's it for now. Those are the basics, the things to know about AD20.5, AD20S, and AD20. There's a lot more out there. There's a whole custom line. There's the AD20 Compact. I don't want to get into all of that because there's some range, but really the core of what they're selling out there is kind of represented here in a bit of what's on the table, and hopefully it helps you with your buying decisions. Some of these are available from stores at any given time, like this one right here, these guys over here, that one right there. The AD20S are going to drop and pretty much sell out pretty quickly at this point. Maybe that'll change in the future. And you're really only seeing the AD20 full size on very rare website drops in the last year, and then like Knifejoy, I think, may have just dropped some of them with AD20i. So the I means that the blade was made in Italy as an international variant. So they're just starting to bring those out and increase production thanks to that manufacturing up in Italy. They didn't want to do that one in Taiwan, but manufacture, blade, all that. I think it's put together and assembled in the US, but the blade is made in Italy, if I recall correctly. So without further confusing, just understanding, that the AD20 are going to be the most rare, the AD20S are the next harder to get, and the AD20.5 are fairly readily available and now out in S35VN, which is really cool. So all for now. I will see you on the next one. Please like, subscribe, comment, let me know what I missed, and take care.